Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest here on Backlog Banner. I'm Timo. I'm joined by my three other co-reviewers, Abram, Tanner, and Tucker. We are talking this week about the 1947 Elia Kazan film, A Gentleman's Agreement.
No A, just gentleman's agreement.
Gentleman's Agreement. Yeah, well, I had that trouble when I was looking it up to watch. A very interesting movie. I think we're going to have a great discussion about it. This is the one to watch. I think this is the one to watch as an interesting discussion wise. But first we got to discuss, or we got to review what happened last week.
Wow.
Last week we talked about The Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow's movie, and to my surprise, but not to the other fellows, it ended up at the number 3 position on our list, just one below Parasite and one above Godfather Part 2. So this week we will find out where Elia Kazan's Gentleman's Agreement. I can't get it right. It's fine. Whatever. Gentleman's Agreement, where that ends up on the list.
Yes,
All right.
that's the goal.
The oldest film we've watched to date.
Yes.
1947.
And you know how happy I'm about that? Because I am fucking tired of those mid-70s Best Picture winners. Not because they're bad films, but because I just want some variety. There's so many years for us to
We watched what? We've seen like 5 70s or 80s movies now.
Yes.
That's an era that I think we've kind of
We've
run our course
covered.
on. But
Yes.
that's just how the spin works. We are at its mercy. The wheel controls my life.
Mm-hmm.
This was
I
one of
have
the
let
oldest
Jesus
films I've ever
take the
seen.
wheel.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
You are a little film bitch, aren't you?
I have comments about the sort of the context of the time in which this film was made, but
Mhm.
I feel like we should generally just talk about the movie before we get into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the plot synopsis of the film is that Gregory Peck's character, Skylar Green, or what's his
Phil
name?
Schuyler Green, yeah.
Phil
Philip
Schuyler
Schuyler
Green is a writer for a high-profile magazine in New York, and he's just moved to New York. His wife has died, and he takes on an assignment to uncover anti-Semitism. It's the assignment on anti-Semitism. It's very broad, but he's given instructions to make it pointed, and he really struggles with how to make it. And in the end, he writes the piece. Is if you can imagine that.
Imagine a movie where you're just like, oh, I couldn't think about it. Sorry. Yeah.
With lots of twists and turns. I want to start out by saying that we have to consider how this film was made. This film was made in the classical Hollywood system. They had the studios were the powerhouses. They had their writers, they had their actors as, contract. They had all that control.
Yeah.
And I think that this film works super, super well as a classical Hollywood film.
Oh yeah, I'd agree.
Sure, yeah. And something that I'm going to bring up through my discussion of this is a lot of my criticisms with the film are more based on just the tropes and theming of the era and not necessarily the film inherently in itself.
Before starting this film, I sent you guys a Snapchat. It was a little bit incendiary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you were like,
I had opened up the film and I was flipping it off, and it was something to the effect of, I just bought some dumb Star Wars games on Steam. I wish I was playing that instead of watching this.
Mm-hmm.
It took maybe 5 minutes for me to be completely engaged by the film. And by the end, I did not feel that runtime. I did not feel
This is a
other
reasonable
than-
runtime, actually.
yeah, it's a 2-hour movie.
But it's completely immersive and fast-paced in a way that a lot of films I've watched recently haven't been.
Well,
And
compared
I
to a
found
lot of
myself-
other Best Picture winners we've watched, it's really quick.
I found myself really, really enjoying this film.
Yeah. It's something that I very much enjoyed as well. I am quite a bit more experienced in the movies of this era than I think the rest of you are.
Well, remember I took a film history class, so I'm pretty well experienced too. I've seen a lot of like early classical Hollywood, like late 20s stuff too, that then would
Sure.
move on and like 30s stuff too. So
La
I know-
Dita, look at these film majors over here. You may know lots about movies, but how many times have you seen Joker?
No,
Once.
but what I was trying to get at there is that this film's strongest suit, in my opinion, other than the theming and the topics that we're going to have to be getting into that are more of political, socio-political criticisms, is the aesthetic of the sort of 1940s newspaper New York kind of deal, and I really enjoy that. As I'm trying to get with my experience, I love Howard Hawks, I love Frank Capra, I love all those films that really have a focused narrative in the sort of journalistic newspaper, even like things like Citizen Kane. That was a really big focus in that area, and this is such an interesting spin on that topic that was so widely covered in that era, that I think it kind of takes it to the next level, and I can really see why this won Best Picture.
Myself am in a journalism class. Abram, you are a real journalist. I thought that was just really fun to look at it. Tanner is chilling out.
Yeah, also a journalism major. Just want to throw that out there.
We have experience in this realm, right? And so for me, that was super interesting to watch this perspective about it. Hollywood makes movies about Hollywood, but this is a movie about print, which is totally different. And yet I think it still was just like very interesting to see how all that worked, especially in the like work culture of 1947.
Yeah.
It speaks to a lot of different appeals that the film has. Of course, there's the mainly political and socially activist thread, but I also found myself, like you were saying, I write a lot. That's my job. That's how I get by. And so from that lens, I think there's one line that really resonated with me where he's like, when everything kind of goes wrong, I kind of fall into my work, and then I let that become me in some way. So I think there's a lot of really interesting appeals that this film has, depending on who you are, depending on what you come into it with. Not only did it resonate with me personally, this was a fucking perfect timing in terms of the poignancy of the messaging of the film.
Yeah.
So
if you were to watch an old movie to gain some new insight about our current world, this might be it. This strangely very much about today as much as it is about, it's not today. You wouldn't say it's about anti-Semitism, but it's so easy to just map what it's saying onto the issues of today.
It's very interesting that that you bring that up, because this, I felt like, the theme of, the direct action instead of just the talking about these issues, and the criticism of specifically the white liberalism that the people they were talking about in the movie, basically, they renounce anti-Semitism, but at the same time they don't take any direct action to stop it in its tracks when they see it in their everyday lives. And the fact that you brought up that we were unlikely to see something like this now, or something about anti-Semitism, led me to want to say the parallel I drew between this film and my personal favorite film of the 2010s, one of the most important films of the 2010s, Get Out. Because even though it takes, a sort of more horror stylized genre take to that idea, the message itself is very much the same, is that racism, or, we translate it over to this film, anti-Semitism, still exists within these communities, white liberal communities.
Yeah. And I think that that's actually the film's, like, as you're saying, why it is so poignant today, and something that I think needs, like, I'm glad that this won Best Picture. Like, this is clearly something a lot of thought I went into. And I think the messaging and of the concept that there are so many people who say, oh, I'm not racist. Oh, I'm not homophobic. Oh, I'm not anti-Semitic. But then they don't actually take direct action. And the idea that there are people who are inherently supported by the system and don't feel the necessity to speak out, because they're like, oh, the world's actually pretty good. People are just overblowing it. And of course that applies to us. We're straight white men in America. We don't have the issues that a lot of people experience. And I think it's important to watch movies like this that sort of screw with your brain. You're like, oh, well, I guess, that is true. I could really do more.
I am comfortable in my identity rather than, as opposed to a lot of people, even in this country.
I think we do need to bring out the elephant in the room. What we didn't mention yet is that Gregory Peck's character pretends to be a Jew for 8 months.
He does pretend to be a Jew for 8 months. I am a little bit conflicted on it, because while, that's totally called appropriation. And if you were to do that nowadays, like even if you were to be like maybe a darker skinned white person and try to pass as a light skinned black person, like that would be considered really bad. People would really hate
Yes.
you for it. And yet for me in this movie, it kind of works. I think it kind of like makes sense, and he does it with
Respect, yeah.
he's respectful, and he does it to not to get any benefit. He does it to get, to get the truth. And the film doesn't go easy on him for that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm sorry to tie this back into Get Out, but that is literally the plot of that movie. Spoilers for Get Out, by the way, is that the white people are transplanting their brains into the bodies of black people because there's sort of this reversed, this very twisted idea of the reaping the stylistic benefits of being black in America and not wanting the societal problems that come with that.
You're kind of right. This is the connection. It's clicking in my brain. The puzzle pieces.
I'm going to have to tweet at Jordan Peele, be like, "Hey, did you plagiarize this movie?"
Yeah. Well, I'm not accusing Jordan Peele of that, but yeah, I think you're really right in that. It's easy on face value to say like, well, this movie's a little problematic because it's a Christian guy pretending to be Jewish. But yeah, you're right. He's doing that to expose. He's doing that from his own experience to expose anti-Semitism in this piece that he's writing. He's not trying to reap any benefits from it.
Yeah. Abram?
I don't know. I think that I think it's a little bit more complex. I think there's a good amount of hypocrisy to at least be discussed regarding the film and regarding us watching it and feeling like, oh, this is what we should spread the film around. Sure, but is that not exactly what Kathy would do?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to discuss about watching this film. It is a very good piece of cinema. It is incredibly well put together. As far as applying it socially, politically, I think there's more to talk about. And to the point of him pretending to be Jewish, it's weird, but it's also a film. And I think that as a narrative tool, as a tool to further this story and expose its political message, I think it works very well.
I can't think of how I would do it differently. I don't know how I would rewrite it to make it so that you could do the same thing without using the same plot device.
But I don't think you have to. And I at least that's where I come into film for it. The message of the film is not go pretend to be Jewish and then say, look at how I put the weight of the world on my back and then dropped it. Like, that's not what the film is trying to say. And so even from a modern lens, I have a hard time saying it's like problematic or anything because
I agree.
What it's furthering, I think, is very important. And it's important that we don't just watch the film and then say, okay, we're done. So I think there's more to discuss there. But I think it's a subversive story, and it does a lot to illustrate the injustices that the film is talking about in a way that doesn't feel completely forced. Like when there's a one scene at dinner with Dave that feels, oh, we're having this confrontation just to have this confrontation. But I think the success of the film is it feels very organic most of the time.
There is moments where, see, when I heard the premise of this movie, I thought it was going to be all heavy-handed stuff like that, where a guy comes up to him in a bar and says, "I don't like you because you're Jewish," and then and there was that moment with Dave. But I feel like it's sort of I think the director or the writers sort of knew that was going to be an expectation. Potentially, maybe they knew. So the very first interaction, the very first point of contention when it comes to Phil pretending to be Jewish is it the
doctor, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and the doctor recommends he recommends
a non-Jewish doctor,
and Phil is like, wait, what about like this guy? And he's like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
like he's okay, but like
it's not outwardly hateful. It's internalized like anti-Semitism.
Well,
my favorite moment of that is the secretary in his office who is Jewish herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and who has this sort of I just unlocked a whole other thing because today in 2020 we're talking a lot about like internalized racism, internalized misogyny. That secretary seems to have internalized anti-Semitism, even as she is Jewish herself.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting topic. Abram's got something to say.
No, well, I mean, the only thing I was going to mention is that the physician is literally like, oh, he overcharges and stretches out sessions because he's a
Yeah.
Jewish doctor. There was no subtlety to that scene
Well,
at all.
okay.
He didn't
That
say
is
he was. He never said, "Oh, it's because he's Jewish," but it was strongly implied through the name of the doctor. So
I
Well,
thought.
also,
Oh,
Philip does say, like, hey, are you
I
saying this
am.
because he's a doctor or because he's a Jewish doctor? And then also because I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
Like the film, I think, is good about challenging its characters and putting its characters in uncomfortable situations,
Yeah.
but at the
Mhm.
same time not making it feel ridiculous. Like it does. It's also 1940s sentiment being expressed in the film, so that's important to contextualize. But I don't think most of the time it's fucking coming with the mallet saying, hey, he's
yeah.
an anti-Semite. Ba-bonk,
That
ba-bonk, ba-bonk. I think
I,
That
I
really
think
is-
that is
tasteful.
a really important point because
Yeah.
while the film, I would characterize it as heavy-handed. It clearly tells you what it's about. And
Yeah.
yet I don't think it would work. I think if this film tried to be much more subtle and tried to like hint at what it was trying to say and like get you to pick up on like subtle cues and stuff, I think
Would be as impactful.
it would not be as impactful, and I wouldn't
No.
go away thinking like, "Huh, I gotta do stuff differently." You know,
Yeah. I think that is my mistake. I didn't remember the interaction with the doctor. I genuinely thought the first like point of
No.
contention was with the with the Jewish secretary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think people are stupid in 1940 or whatever. They didn't they can't take subtlety, the subtleism, as we like to say.
Oh, yeah,
Here on
classic
Backlog
backlog
Banter. You needed to hit him over the head with anti-Semitism is bad. And even if you don't think you're anti-Semitic, you kind of might be based on how you act and things you allow within your social groups.
Yeah. So I have two things to say. All right. And this is going to be kind of be tying back. I've got a criticism of this movie.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I really much enjoy how Phil portrays becoming a Jewish person, quote unquote. He really just says that he is because
Yeah.
Judaism is a religion and not a race. So it's just something that he can easily fit into. But I wish that there was more explicit scenes where he was learning about Judaism as a religion. There's not a synagogue in this movie.
True.
Which I think would have been a very cool scene. And I think that something about him learning about Hebrew, something about him learning about the Torah, something where it was showing him doing a little more research to become more in the mindset of why Jews not chose religion, but believe in what they believe in, all that kind of stuff. That the fact that they pass sort of over that in the fact that he just says he's a Jew and that's kind of it. And that's where him being a Jew comes from, I think is a little bit pass over. I mean, they could have just added
It's a little bit
10
Passover, huh?
Oh shit! That was not intentional, but I think you understand what I'm saying. That being left out, I think, was a little bit of a miss.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they kind of explain that away in the interaction with his son at the breakfast table when he's like, some people are Christian, some people are Catholic, some people are Jewish. I guess that's supposed to be like, it doesn't really matter what they believe; they're just people. I think that's the message that he was sending to his son, and by proxy, I think that's the message that the film was sending.
Mm-hmm. I do have to bring this together with a second thing that Tanner and I can both attribute to. We had to read a book for a class last semester. Yeah. Can't remember the name of the book. I apologize.
I think it's called Black Like Me.
Black Like Me, you're right.
Yes.
In a story in which a sociologist, a white sociologist from whatever the time period it was written in, dyed his skin a darker color and moved to the South for a year or something like that in order to experience the effects of racism. And I definitely took a lot of that in when I was watching this movie. And my first thought is, oh, okay, I already know how this is going to go. Because I've read that book, I know what this story is going to go like. But I do think that the fact that there's a film, B, about a different topic, anti-Semitism versus racism, and see through the lens of journalism, I think does give it its own merit. But I just wanted to say that because this story has been told in other ways, even if the two of you likely never even heard of that book. But I just took that in watching it, but I was pleasantly surprised with the way they handled it and differentiated it from the other version that I had seen.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking a lot about this, the story and stuff. I just want to lay out there that this movie's got a freaking great script. If you think about the plot and like the way it's so classical Hollywood, right? I talked about that a little earlier. You have your A plot. He's trying to write the story, but there's this B plot of him getting remarried to whatever her name is.
Kathy.
Him getting remarried to Kathy. And then as classical Hollywood plots always do, they combine for
yeah.
your final conflict, for your last act, is the combination of the two plots that have been developing. And I love to see that so much. And it's not always done like that nowadays. This is a total hallmark of the classical Hollywood period, where they just like, scripts are more formulaic, I think. But because we don't watch them so much, we don't watch, like, we don't go to the theater every day or every couple days like they would back then to watch the new movies. We don't get bombarded with how essentially formulaic they could be. And so it works in that even though that's how kind of a lot of these were written. And the dialogue, come on, man. Pretty
I
good.
mean, Gregory Peck is a powerhouse. I think we can all agree.
Great performance.
Gregory Peck is just always great. In everything I've seen him in, he's the legend. He's a Hollywood legend. So take that as you will. He's great in this movie, obviously.
I'd like to share, of course, that this movie won Best Picture, clearly, also won Supporting Actress and Best Director, and was nominated for Best Actor for Gregory Peck. By the way, the supporting actress, which won Celeste Holm, the actress that played his mother. Also nominated for Best Film Editing, Adapted Screenplay, Supporting Actress, and Best Actress. Different supporting actress. There was a second supporting actress nomination, which I think is pretty cool.
Interesting.
I think it's important to just talk about the fact that this is a good movie. We could talk about
we analyze the theme a lot, yes.
And the theme is interesting, but I think for me, I was more interested by this just as a drama, because I think what's interesting about watching older films, it's very quaint in terms, by a modern standard. And I don't give a fuck. I haven't seen a lot of movies from the 40s. I don't plan to. Put it on the line. I don't give a shit, to be honest with you. Why would I? Here's the bottom line, though. There's a quaintness to old Hollywood filmmaking. The sets, the way everything is established, the way the clarity of the shots, the way people are in the background, the way everything's so practical. There's a certain ethos about this sort of filmmaking that's really appealing. Then you combine that with the script that Timo was talking so strongly about, and because it's really good, the scenes just blend together into this narrative where you're so connected to the characters and their arcs and the ways that they're coming to a head with each other, and the ways that all of these characters' perspectives are totally grounded and totally justifiable and raise a lot of interesting contradictions. That secretary is really justified in what she's saying. Kathy is really justified in what she's saying. Bad motivation is a bad motivation, but from a character perspective, there's lead to very interesting conflicts. And the way that conflicts crop up and resolve themselves, and the way that the narrative moves and the characters interact, and the way the film is shot and put together is just really, really compelling.
Yeah, we haven't talked about cinematography much, but this is another thing about classical Hollywood. It's just like consistently good. It's good or great consistently. And like the lighting, it is pretty high contrast. There was a couple shots where they were like looking out over this city. And I was just thinking about practically, they had the lights off in the background and they were like bright white and you could clearly tell what the lights are. And then in the midground, it was like really dark. It was like a park or something. And then in the foreground, Gregory Peck was lit up beautifully. And he had great, great lighting, and it was like really high contrast, and I was just like, holy shit, how did they film that? Like that looks awesome. I don't know how you did that on film with little control over all of that lighting.
Yeah. I've got one last thing to say is I really enjoyed his son. Great little actor.
Yeah.
He did a great job.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at the cast. His son, that child actor, went on to have an extraordinarily long Hollywood career, and it was like 50s.
Good for him.
Yeah, so he started off well and did well for himself.
Nice.
Yeah. Anything else anyone else wants to bring up? Oh, actually, I do want to say one last thing. This is sort of what I alluded to at the beginning, that one of my main issues with this film, and the reason it doesn't hit the 10 out of 10, which is very rare, obviously, but the things that knock it down, one of the things being something of the era, as we're talking about a lot of this thing, our perspective on this film is things of its era, is that a lot of the scenes end super abruptly. The ending just bam, cut straight to the end, like last action. And that is something that happens, as all these old movies I've watched happens, and consistently frustrates me. But that it is something that I take issue with, is that, the formulaicness and the Hollywood go-ness of the whole thing, you can feel that in some of the editing choices where they're like, okay, we got to keep moving on. A lot of things can't be given time to breathe. And from a modern perspective, I do think that a lot of the points would have had greater impact if they were given more time to breathe, and if things weren't just, if someone finishes a sentence, bam, fade out to the next scene. Like, could be days later, who knows? But that's just an issue with the era and the filmmaking style and editing of style of the era. But it is something that I took umbrage with because it has consistently always frustrated me.
I've always been taught in screenplays, in scenes, you enter the scene as late as possible and get out as early as possible, and I felt that in this movie. But I don't take issue with it. It's just a style of writing.
Yeah. But I think we've got a couple things to do now, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, here we go.
So we are still figuring out as we get more movies of how to rank them succinctly and accurately. But this week we're going to try a method where I count down and we raise our fingers to the number of which it goes. We've all got the list pulled up, so we know what number it would be replacing if it ends up replacing anything. And so let's go do it. Okay, I'm going to count down.
Let's go do it.
Let's go do it. All right. When I'm done counting down. Raise your fingers to show what place it goes. All right. On.
Everyone's got a spicy one, he says.
2.
Oh boy.
1.
Oh shit.
Whoa. Okay. Well,
okay.
going so Abram put it at 2. I put it at 3. Tucker put it at 4, and Tanner put it at 5.
I did.
Okay. Well, we're gonna start from 5.
Oh, okay. You want me to like plead my case?
Well, no. I mean, I guess we actually aren't gonna start at 5 because all of us have it higher than that. So
Yeah, it's
we're gonna
true.
nix
I guess.
your thing.
I guess so. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
This
oh
doesn't
boy.
work.
No, this is not gonna work. How are we gonna do this?
Let's just start again. 5. Above 5, 1 hand for above 5, 2 hands for above 5, 3 for above 5, 4. Hand above 4, hand above 4, hand above 4, we're above. Up to 3. Put it above 3, above 3, above 3, we're at a tie.
Okay.
I think it should be at 3. It is 3. That's what
Okay, put it at 3.
I think that's a reasonable. Yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll figure that out better for next week. But
Yes. Yes.
this
for
is
sure.
now the 3rd best film in the quest for the
Wow.
bestest.
It's
Yeah.
true. I'm gonna add it to the list right here and right now.
Oh boy.
Well, let's
Gentlemen's-
I actually want to hear why Tanner thinks it should have been at number 5.
Which is below Godfather Part 2.
Yeah. Which. Yeah. I felt like this was above French Connection based on the themes and how well it applies to modern day life and sociopolitics and things of that nature. But I maybe should have brought this up in our review. I took a little issue with the note that it lands on. I like the themes all the way through up until what it lands on with its characters, which I felt was just a little hollow, but understandable for the time in which it was made. So that's what knocked it under Godfather Part 2 for me.
And I would have put it above Parasite had I been given the opportunity to.
Yeah. So why would you have put it above Parasite?
I mean, we can sit and we can talk about the politics and the application of them, but I'm looking at a movie. I'm looking at in my ranking, in my hierarchy, this is number 2. And the reason is because it stands the test of time, not for its political themes, but because it is a stripped back piece of filmmaking as a function of its time, but it remains ridiculously compelling from front to back. Its themes endure. Its script is incredibly sharp. It moves at a wonderful pace. The way the characters interact feels very genuine and complicated. There's a lot here that I think makes it more than just a piece of political activism, but at the same time grounds that to make it important and relevant and transcend its period. I think there's a lot here that's incredibly well done.
Yeah. I would just say that I think that's what Parasite will be in 50 years.
Sure.
Just real quickly, I think Parasite and Gentleman's Agreement are equal, except that Parasite has a little bit more of my favorite thing, subtleism, and so it gets it's inches above due to the subtleism.
Okay.
All right. Well,
I gotta close with one last point to comment on Abram's final thing about the style of the era and it feeling like still consistent in the filmmaking. I'm very excited for you to see other films of this area. Billy Wilder, Howard Hawks, Frank Capra. Some of those guys have films that we're going to watch in this ranking. Films that I absolutely love and I will die on a hill for. You can't take it with you. The Apartment. Those films. And I'm sure plenty of the other ones that we haven't talked about that I haven't seen yet are going to fit in that area for you because they're all very similar. As I said, there's a lot of connecting tissue between films of the era, and I'm very excited for you to see those films.
Well, I'm very excited too.
I'm very excited as well, and that's why I think it's time to hit that spin wheel and find out what's going on next. All right. Well, I've got it pulled up. You ready? You ready? You ready? Boom! I
God,
clicked
I
it.
am.
Oh, it's going. Oh my God, it's spinning like crazy. I made sure to shuffle it too before. Whoa, 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 whoa.
What is shuffling? What?
Well, just so that the numbers are all mixed up. We got our
Yeah.
number. It's the number 36.
Okay. So that's sort of in the
36.
middle.
Isn't that 80s, 70s?
It is 80 exactly.
Oh.
1980.
Or it's fine. You know what? We're gonna watch them all at some point, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. 1980, the film directed by Robert Redford,
Oh, what?
starring Donald Sutherland. Ordinary People. 1980.
Oh, interesting.
Huh.
Very interesting. Let me look up Ordinary People a
I've
second.
never heard of this one.
Well, we're all
Directed
gonna
by-
watch it. So
That's,
Yeah.
that's
Alright.
great. Well, we
That's
forgot
what's-
one last thing before we finish up. We got to look at our little graph.
Oh, of course, of course.
The graph.
The graph, okay? Ooh.
Ah.
Ah.
Oh, look at that.
New number 3, Gentleman's Agreement, Elia Kazan. 1947.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys. I think we're done. We're gonna be here next week.
We'll be here next week. We'll be here all week
Stealing
next week.
Timo Summer. I'm Thunder. Sorry.
It's my show, damn it. Well, I had a really great time. This is a great discussion. I knew it was going to be a good one. This is a great movie. If
Oh yeah.
you should watch this movie.
Please
This
do,
is-
yeah.
Go watch this movie. It's cheap to rent. It's worth it. And you'll be amazed. You'll be like, I hate old movies. Well, you won't hate this one. So
Yeah.
thank you for sticking around this long. We'll catch you next week on The Quest for the Bestest.
So long.
Bye.
Woo.
Okay, now I really feel left out, motherfucker.
Oh God.
Tanner, can you hear Tucker having sex?
I was looking through it and I was like, come on, like, this is kind of risque. But how can I not? How
No,
can
yeah,
I
yeah,
not?
Yes. Yes.